Gosh, wasn't it just 5 days ago that we were celebrating the birth of Jesus? And today we have a preteen creating a little havoc in his household. Things haven't changed much in 2,000 years, have they? And you know, if we had texting or Facebook, this gospel probably wouldn't even have existed. But that's not the case. And whether we know it or not, he really didn't create that much havoc back in those days, because at that time, families, the men and the women, traveled separately. And it would have been very common for a 12-year-old boy to be with one parent or the other, especially at that age. And as for running into these scholars in the temple, well, again, that was normal because they would talk or kind of show off, especially at the time of Passover. So maybe he didn't create just as much havoc as we are hearing. The family, the Holy Family. Pope Francis in his had stated in 2016 in his exhortation, the family is where we learn to live with others despite our differences, to belong to one another. Right? Now, I'll bet, especially over the last 3 or 4 days with many families surrounding us, you might have taken a new and different appreciation of that statement from Pope Francis as we now kind of get back to normal. But as much as we look at family, today is about a little bit more than family. It was back in the mid-70s when I spent about 6 months training to be a police officer. And half of that time, 3 months, was in a classroom setting, 40 hours a week, with about 24 others from across the state of Illinois. And a few months after our graduation, our group decided that we would kind of get together and see how things were going, and just to catch up with each other and see if it was worth it. You know, I knew that training today might be a little bit different, but yes, they put us through our paces back then. So when we got together this time, several months later, one of our classmates, Billy, who was at 21, was probably the youngest one in our class, kind of related this story to us. He said that shortly after his graduation, he and his fiancée were having dinner with his older sister and her husband. They were about 10 years older than him. And in his family, he was always teased about being the baby and how mom and dad always doted on him because he was the youngest. Well, while they were playing cards at the table after dinner, suddenly there was this loud banging on the door. And they heard this shouting, "Mr. K, Mr. K." And they got up from the table and they recognized the voice as the young girl from next door, the neighbor's daughter. And so as they went to the door, they heard her say in this panicked voice, "Help me, something's wrong with my dad." Well, instantly, Billy got up from the chair. He went out and he said to her, "Take me to him." And as they ran across the front lawns to the house with everybody following, he asked her what happened. And after she quickly explained, he yelled to his sister, "You call 911. And he told the little girl, he said, "You stay here and wait for the ambulance." So Billy went into the house with his brother-in-law following. And they went up the stairs, and there in the back bedroom, they found this man, her father, unresponsive on the bed. So sure enough, Billy, with the help, took him on and put him on the floor. And after giving a few instructions to those around, and he had done a quick assessment, he began doing CPR. And all while he was doing that, he was talking, encouraging and talking. And about 15 minutes later, the paramedics showed up. He quickly explained to them all that took place. He told them what time he started the CPR, and then they stepped in and took over. Now, it had to be, he said, about a half an hour later, things were settling down. The police left, the ambulance left, and the girl was united with her mom, and they were off to the hospital and then went back into his sister's house where they were kind of settling in again. And he said his brother-in-law walked up to him, stuck out his hand, and he said, "You know, an hour ago, I would have said that you were just a kid over his head. But I learned something new today. Thank you." See, today's story is about transformation, change. We've all had transformations in our families, right? Transformation makes us look at things differently. Our children go off to college, or they become parents, or maybe they do their first surgery after med school, or our sibling or good friend picks up and moves across country, or maybe they get involved in political leadership. Transformation, change affects every one of us. And it was like that for Mary and Joseph today too. They saw this transformation in Jesus, a transformation that was both human and divine. In my Father's house. They heard those words. Remember, from the very beginning, Mary and Joseph knew that Jesus was unique. With these words, they knew he was of God. And from this moment on, they would never look at him the same. You know, this is the only story in the Bible, in the Gospels, about Jesus' childhood. And from this day on, we no longer hear about Joseph. The transformation has taken place. And this story of this transformation is for us too, because we, just like Mary and Joseph, need to be able to see the presence of Christ, the Son of God, in our daily lives. Think about it. We need to be able to see that, whether it's in our spouse, our parents, our friends, our neighbor, our co-workers, or even the guy that comes up to us in the gas station and says, "Can you give me $1 to help me get by?" We need to see that presence of Christ, both the human, you know, that part that gets under our skin, and the divine, the part that opens our heart and our soul. That change, the transformation, the presence of Christ. Maybe that transformation could be part of our New Year's resolutions.